Let me ask you a logical question. If two people start in the exact same place, same city, same opportunities, same resources, why does one of them build an extraordinary life while the other stays exactly where they started? And most people will say, talent, lack, connection. But none of those answers can explain the real difference. Because if you look closely at history, the people who build extraordinary lives all share the strange trait. So stay tuned at the end of this video and you will get the exact response. If you look closely at history, the people who build extraordinary lives all share one strange trait. Before they had success, before they had money, before anyone believed in them, they believed in something that didn't yet exist. And to everyone around them, the belief looked insane. It looked unrealistic. It looked delusional. So here is the real question. What if the thing we call delusional is actually the first stage of success? What if the difference between people who change their lives and people who don't is simply the courage to believe something that reality has not yet proven? And today I want to break down something powerful, the philosophy of delusion belief. Why some of the most successful people in the world think this way, why society tries to suppress it, and how understanding this idea might completely change the way you look at your future. But here is the most important part. By the end of this video, you will understand why logical people often stay average and why slightly delusional people often win. So part 1 is the hidden rule of success. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Most people live their entire lives inside invisible limits created by their own environment, limits created by their education, limits created by what they see around them. If everyone around you earns a certain income, your brain starts believing that this is the maximum possible. If everyone around you follows the same path, your brain assumes that this path is normal. School, job, security, stability. And slowly, without realizing it, people begin to shrink their expectation. And not because they lack intelligence, but because the human brain is designed to adapt to its environment. It copies what it sees, which means something dangerous happens. Reality begins to define ambition, instead of ambition redefining reality. Part 2. The psychological trap of being realistic. There is a phrase people use all the time, be realistic. It sounds responsible, it sounds mature, it sounds intelligent, but in many cases, being realistic simply means accept something that someone else created. Think about it. Every major innovation in history looked unrealistic at the beginning. Airplanes, the internet, electric car, private space company. If you had told someone decades earlier that those things would exist, most people would have called you crazy. But here is the paradox. The future is always built by people who ignore the limits of the present. Let's go to the part 3, the delusion advantage. Now here is where things become interesting. A person with a strong vision behaves differently. When someone deeply believes in a future version of themselves, their actions change, their tolerance of risk increases, their persistence increases, their creativity increases. They start looking for opportunities that the others simply ignore because the brain begins searching for ways to make the belief real. And this is where something powerful happens. Delusional belief creates momentum even before results appear. Part 4. Why society refuses delusional thinkers. And here is something that most people never talk about. Society prefers predictable individuals, people who follow the script, people who behave within expected limits. Delusional thinkers disrupt that structure. They challenge assumption. They ask uncomfortable questions. They refuse to accept the standard version of life, and because of that, they often face skepticism, criticism, even ridicule. But history shows a strange pattern. The same people who were criticized in the beginning are often admired later. Part 5. The difference between vision and fantasy. Now, it is important to clarify something. Not all the delusion is useful. There is a strict difference between empty fantasy and strategic belief. Fantasy says, I will succeed, but it does nothing. Strategic belief says, I will succeed, and then builds systems, skills, and discipline around that belief. The belief is the fuel. The work is the engine. Without belief, the engine never starts. Without work, the fuel burns out. Both are necessary. Part 6. Why must people quit too early? Success rarely happens quickly. Most meaningful achievements requires years of effort. And this is where belief becomes critical. When someone lacks belief, failure feels permanent. When someone has strong belief, failure feels temporary. They interpret setbacks differently. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? They ask, what can this teach me? This psychological difference is what separates persistence from quitting. Part 7. Identity creates reality. One of the most powerful forces in human behavior is identity. People act according to who they believe they are. If someone believes they are limited, their action reflects that belief. But if someone believes they are capable of building something extraordinary, then their behaviors change. They take different risks. They pursue different opportunities. They surround themselves with different people, and slowly their environment begins to reflect their internal belief. Part 8. The long game. The biggest mistake people make is expecting fast validation. They want proof immediately. They want confirmation from the world, but meaningful success often requires acting without external validation for months and sometimes for years, which means the only thing sustaining the effort is internal belief. Without that belief, most people stop long before results appear. Part 9. Why delusional thinking is logical. Ironically, believing in a bigger future may actually be the most logical strategy, because the downside of ambition is small. You might fail, but the downside of never trying is a lifetime of wondering what could have been. From a purely logical perspective, the risk of dreaming bigger is far smaller than the regret of never attempting it. So, let's turn to the original question. Why do two people start in the same place but end up with completely different lives? It is not always talent. It is not always luck. Often the difference begins much earlier, with a belief that seems unrealistic, a belief that seems premature, a belief that seems delusional. But that belief changes behavior. Behavior changes opportunity, and opportunity changes outcome. And eventually, what once looked like delusion becomes reality. So, if you ever find yourself believing in a future that other people cannot see yet, maybe you are not wrong. Maybe you are simply seeing it earlier. Hi guys, my name is Cristina Fundo. I am the most delusional person ever, and that is because I have seen the result that I have already achieved, and I will use the same strategy for all of my dreams. Nothing is impossible, and if you want to follow me, then you will have more tips every day. It will be very nice to see you in the next video. Bye bye.